Greetings and welcome to another episode of Pop's Collection. I'm Ron Tweedy, joining me is Pops, and today we're going to do yet another list show. We're going to be talking about, since we reviewed the Sonic the Hedgehog film last week, this week we're going to talk about the top 5 video game to movie adaptations we want to see. So, welcome.
That's right. Welcome, everybody. Pops the Gamer here. Okay, well, maybe not so much, but I did have Atari when I first got married 42 years ago.
Right.
I had my own Atari 2600. Can you imagine?
Yep.
And it was expensive back then, you know?
Right.
And your mom so graciously, since we didn't have any children, she allowed me to buy games. Mm-hmm. Like Yar's Revenge, mm-hmm. Bowling, so, but when I first looked at this, I thought, how many video games are there? I chose to do it from what I said my criteria was going to be that they had to be video games that had comics. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, I didn't realize how many video games had comics or mangas, as you know.
Right.
But and upset me the most is that when I originally started, some of the movies that I was looking at were things that that were really successful video games, were ones that were also comics that I used to own.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, like Resident Evil, which I think probably is the most successful video game one, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And also I forgot about Mortal Kombat.
Yep.
Which I didn't realize that they had comics for that, but then I found out that they actually DC had some comics with it. So
right. Well, I mean, that is a very popular marketing strategy, is to build hype for a particular brand to contract with a particular comic line, whether it's the big two or whether it's a more smaller known brand to develop a storyline for you to get your customers interested in the thing. I could think of Star Wars as a great example of that. They had Marvel do a series before that. You had ROM, the Space Knight, which is also a Marvel Comics thing, but it was to promote a toy of all things. So it's definitely not unheard of. So,
well, that's the same thing with G.I. Joe.
Yeah, good example. Yeah.
They made a lot out of that, incredibly a lot.
Those were high quality comics too, which is interesting.
Absolutely. Yes, they were good storylines.
Yeah.
So that was my criteria. There had to be a comic for it.
Sure.
And there had to not be a movie out about it, because just to name a few, I thought about games that I played, which is very limited amount. Mm-hmm. But I thought about Tekken. I don't know if you're familiar with that game.
I am.
I did not realize that there were two movies out with Tekken.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Assassin's Creed.
Okay.
Another game that I had played, and it was like, duh, it came out like a few years ago, but I didn't. So I had to scratch those off my list.
Okay.
So.
Well, I did not have such. I was not as stringent with mine. I decided that even if they might have had they may not have had a blockbuster, Hollywood movie, but they had, some sort of film adaptation. I still want to see like a proper film adaptation. So we'll see as we go through the list.
Right. Well, we could say that with the proper director, some of those movies, such as like the old Mario movie, if James Gunn would have been directing that, it would have been a totally different movie. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
The original one. But hey, it's all good, right?
Uh-huh.
All right. So without further ado, let's get rocking.
Yeah, let me get it started. Hold on a second.
Sure.
Let me share the screen. All right, should be able to see it now. Can you see it?
I can see a screen.
Excellent. Good. All right. So I think the last time I went first, so we're going to go first with you with your number 5. So
All
with
right,
that,
very
we'll
good.
talk about Call of Duty.
Yes, and Modern Warfare 2.
Yes.
The storyline that I kind of feel like there's been movies similar to it.
Oh yeah.
Because we're talking about, but not one that said, Task Force 141 or that, Vladimir Makarov was the bad guy.
Right.
But I have seen kind of thoughts of movies about defending DC, from a Russian invasion,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not mostly terrorists, not a Russian invasion, which I think would kind of be apropos for the times we live in today.
I suppose.
It would be a more familiar type topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's at least with Modern Warfare, you had the Russian side, but you also had Al Assad, who's from the Middle East, and so you got
That's true. Yes.
so a little more complex. I personally, for me, story wise, I actually prefer the original Call of Duty, where it's set in World War II, and you have the based on real historical events, and that's when I first started playing the game series. So I'm definitely actually more of a fan of the older stuff, actually, which is not definitely. It's gone into a totally different direction now, where the modern Call of Duties take place in the future, and so you've got the enhancements that are not even
not real,
yeah,
right?
yeah, speculative. What does the future military look like? And so it's interesting.
Well, that's kind of yeah. I like this story, and it was a game that I think played one time at GameStop. So it was
Okay.
like,
Yep.
that it kind of, I remembered that in my head, just like some of my other games that I've chosen
Yep.
are games that I may have only played at GameStop, especially the older ones when your brothers used to work for GameStop. So
Sure.
when I'd go to pick them up or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would spend time waiting for them by playing the game that they had, was the big game at that time. So
sure.
So yes, I think with the right director, this could be a really good story.
Okay.
But again, my opinion. Our listeners may have different thoughts.
Sure.
Okay, what about your number 5?
Yeah. So I went with something across the pond. So I took a Japanese franchise called Persona. So it's actually a subseries of a larger one published by Atlas called Shin Megami Tensei. But the Persona games, particularly from Persona 3 on, they're interesting in that half of the game is like a standard dungeon crawler where you have a party of characters and you're helping enlisting demons to help you fight the bad guys. But the interesting thing is that the other half of the game is kind of like I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not necessarily a dating simulator. It's almost kind of like, but although there is some dating mechanics to it, but basically you're a high school student during the day, and so you have to, go through, study. You have to, choose: are you going to get a job after school? If so, what are you going to do? And then the other part of it is connecting relationally with other characters in the game, and when you do, you unlock certain powers and whatnot. So I like that the two mechanics there, and I know that they've already adapted some of the later ones into animes, but I think that it could go with at the very least a Netflix series. I think would be pretty cool, like a live action like Netflix series. So anyway, that's my pick for number 5.
Well, Netflix does a really good job, as we can attest to with the Marvel series that they cleared up. And actually, your mother and I just got finished watching a series that you might be interested. I don't know. It's called Raising Dion.
Okay.
It's from a comic book by Dennis Liu.
Okay.
And they have 2 seasons of it, so it's pretty good. We enjoyed it thoroughly.
Uh-huh.
You might, I don't know,
Yeah.
but they, like I said, they've done real well with all the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
And this one is just seems to be another good job that they did. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to see that too. That's I think that if, as we're going through this, if we can, like, maybe if we've got an idea for the story, maybe we could share that too,
Right.
if you feel like it. So
Yeah. Well, I
is
mean, yeah. Go ahead.
is this game itself, is this one that you can play with other players?
Not really. It's more of a role playing game that's single player.
Okay,
But
okay.
obviously there's multiple characters that you control at a time. So
Oh,
there
okay.
there's a piece of that.
So
Uh,
it's something that Pops really probably couldn't play real well.
Maybe I don't know. You could invest it if you invest the time in it. I'm sure you could be able to
Oh,
play it.
okay.
But anyway,
Okay.
those games are pretty long, so I'll have to say that it does require a little bit of time commitment.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, so you want to move on?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, number 4 for you was another shooter game, Gears of War.
Yes. And I especially like this game. I remember it very well from the GameStop,
Mm-hmm.
uh, humanity versus the locust horde,
Okay.
on another planet. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Uh, I really enjoyed playing that a lot. And it's one where every time I played it, I got a little bit closer to the boss. I never got to the first boss,
Okay.
but I got a little further in the game. I'm like, I'm not really a gamer, but
Right. Right.
I thought that I could see that story on the big screen.
Sure. Yeah.
So it was definitely it's fun to play, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay.
So
Very good. Yeah, I don't
yeah.
have much to say about Gears of War. I never really played it, so yeah, nothing to add. Sorry.
No, well, hey, it's like you say, it's just a shooter game basically.
Yeah.
Although you can use other instruments besides
Yeah.
guns. So
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we talked about this beforehand. How this was harder than I thought it was going to be, and I think I was trying to think about why is this so hard, and I think there's 2 things. I mean, number one is that a lot of games that I think of, the story that they have is I don't think really conducive to a film adaptation. So a great example of this is like Street Fighter, where you have a number of different characters come together, and in the context of the game they're all fighting each other, but you can't have them do that because it's not really a free for all. You have to have them on teams or whatever, and so that's the first challenge, is that a video game adaptation for some games doesn't make it good into a movie. And then the other side of it, you could have a game with a very compelling story that could not be well translated into a film. Like Final Fantasy is one I thought of. I don't have, even though they did make a Final Fantasy film, I don't think the grand narrative that they're trying to tell could be contained in a 2 or 3 hour movie. So that's the other hard thing about this. So
right. Well, that's one, which actually there's been a few Final Fantasies.
right,
That's one that would probably be better as a series, a TV series.
possibly depends on the
Right, and
story they're
which
trying to tell.
direction and which part of the story they go to.
Yeah. So anyway, that I think that's a challenge that we're facing. But I think we despite the challenges there, we still came up with a pretty cohesive list. So
Well, and that's the thing. As I was thinking on them,
uh-huh.
every one, I kind of thought in my mind how I would tell the story.
Yeah.
And so, maybe we'll share, like I said, little tidbits
Yeah, it's fine.
here and there, what we think of it.
Yep.
Okay, so
All right.
your number 4 is?
Yep, number 4 is the Ace Attorney series, and so this is a series of adventure games that came out originally on the Game Boy Advance, but they've been ported to other systems. But this is an adventure game, and you take the role of Phoenix Wright, who is an attorney, a very novice attorney, and you kind of just get thrown into it. You're trying to clear your former law partner's sister of a murder charge that that your law partner was murdered by. So you get kind of thrown right into the middle of it, and you uncover the case. It plays out a little bit different than the American judicial system. The Japanese judicial system is a little bit different. So you have that, but the cool thing about the series is that you have the quote unquote battles or trials, and so during cross examination, you're looking for loopholes in people's stories, and trying to exploit that. It's really you wouldn't think that a game about being a lawyer would be compelling, but the Ace Attorney series does a great job of it. Part of it has to do with the characters that are very uniquely created and have different quirks and everything. And I do know that there's already been a live adaptation in Japan for this, but I think that Western release take on this would be pretty cool. So anyway, that's Ace Attorney.
Well, that sounds really interesting. So the game itself is probably real. You really have to use your mind. It's not just a quick flipping of the joystick or whatever.
Oh, yeah. It's none of that. It's very, very slow paced. You go at the pace you want to go, but it's still fun. To kind of go through and think about logical puzzles, or you're investigating crime scenes, looking for clues and things like that. So it's cool.
Well, that's interesting. I might have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely worth a check.
Okay, so number 3.
Yep. You had one that was on my short list as well. This one, Starcraft. So,
well, we had discussed Warcraft
yes.
as a movie,
right?
And I thought about this story. Takes place in the 26th century.
Right.
You have a galactic struggle against 4 different groups. So I thought, wow, just think that would be really cool. Humanity against insects, or they had another group called the
Protoss,
Zelda and the Protoss, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, that would be really a cool story.
Yeah. Yeah, I do really like this universe. It's very interesting, particularly that when the original game came out, I guess it was 98. Like that was the year where like a ton of really, really good games came out, and this one, I think StarCraft really did change the industry. I think this was the first game to really introduce esports, and is responsible for a lot of people making their living now. Gaming professionally, which is
oh yes, and WoW, and what was that one that your League of Legends your brothers played that was a similar type game?
Sure.
But yeah, this was like, I had a hard time selecting the position of the games.
Yeah.
But the more that I thought about the stories, and the more creative I thought about them, and thought in my mind how I would feel about it, that's kind of like got my rating to be the way that it was.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you approve of one of mine.
Okay.
All right, so your number 3 is?
Yeah, this one is a little generalized. The Elder Scrolls series. So, I think most folks know the game Skyrim. That's where it became most popular. But to me, it kind of opened up a world of fantasy genre that is really interesting. So, they've had games since like the 90s. Whether it's Morrowind or Oblivion, but the world that they built, they have all these different races of characters, whether it's elf characters, human characters, or even some other beast folk like Khajiits, which are cat-like people, or Argonians, who are like reptilians. But yeah, it's just a really good, compelling fantasy story where they have a world, and all the different nations are trying to you know
I can see that.
yeah,
I can
it's
in my mind I can picture that as
yeah,
a movie.
yeah. I think a bit like Game of Thrones, but you know not without all the um, inappropriate stuff. So anyway,
Right, right, right. So, is this similar to the game that you and your brothers play together now? What's it called? Elden something?
are you talking about Elden Ring?
Yeah,
I
is
don't play.
that part of the story
No,
or?
that's a different game, but I don't play that game. So
Oh, you don't? Okay.
no.
All right. Well, hey, I remember it had ELDEN
Yeah, yeah,
in it, so
yeah,
I just was
yeah.
just asking a
No,
question.
that's okay. But the my brothers are very familiar with the Elder Scrolls games. They played a lot of Oblivion and Morrowind and Skyrim. So
Ah, okay.
yeah,
Very good. Very good. So, but you do play games with your brothers, right?
yeah, yeah. Of
Okay,
course,
just asking a question. Not the gamer that I am. What can I say?
sure,
All
sure.
right, so we're getting close to the almost there to the number
Yep,
one.
yep,
And
yep.
so
So
my number
yeah,
two,
your number two is the Legend of Zelda.
yes. And if you thought about the very first Zelda game, wasn't that on a Game Boy, if I'm not mistaken? Or
No,
was it
NES.
on the Nintendo system?
That's right.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, when I thought about the story, I really got the picture of it mostly from the newer games, like the one that
Yeah,
my grandson Isaac plays.
right. Yeah, that's a
You
good
know,
one.
I it they've what they've done with video games now,
Uh huh.
uh, they've really brought you more into the game, uh, visually
Mm-hmm.
from previous times when you had a little couple of dots walking around in between and getting to different places.
Uh huh.
You definitely had to use your imagination a lot more in the beginning
Uh huh.
when they first came out. But the story, it just, Princess Zelda, Link,
Yep.
uh, I think that if I'm not mistaken, they had cartoons with them.
Yeah, there
Uh,
was a cartoon. Yeah.
yes. So, but I did not, couldn't tell if there was any live action movies. And
No, there
this
hasn't been.
one,
Yeah.
I think that it would portray on the screen really nicely, I think,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
Wow. So you got Valiant and Viz Kids, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Very nice. I like it.
Cool.
All right. What about you? Number two for you?
Yeah. Number two is another Western franchise, Mass Effect. Um, Definitely one of my more favorite, more recent franchises. When I say recent, it actually means I guess 13, 14 years ago. But
Well, remember, you are getting older.
yeah, yeah, I know. But anyway, story set in the 2050s, or is it the 2150s? Anyway, humanity has, expanded outside of Earth. They move over to Mars. They find a giant relay that lets them travel interstellarly, and so humanity trying to find its place amongst the other aliens in the galaxy, and then realizing that there's a giant threat, and so everybody needs to unite to fight the Reapers. And so, you know, again, a good movie. I don't know how it would really play out. One of the interesting things about the original Mass Effect is that the main character you create from scratch, and so you can make Shepard, who is the character, a male or a female. So I don't know from a movie perspective, how do you go femme Shep or do you go with the male Shepard? I don't know. But anyway, it's an interesting game. Maybe you do a two-part film where one's femme Shepard, one's the male Shepard. I don't know, but Uh, anyway, that's the other
I
thing
could
is that
I could see that.
yeah,
I could see that where maybe uh, the first shepherd at the end of the first movie dies and is put in a machine that they could put his consciousness or her consciousness and it's
they kind of
opposite sex.
they actually did that with the second film that they had a project where they were able to. Anyway, I don't want to go into spoilers for the game because actually the game is actually really good. Would recommend a playthrough, so I won't spoil any of that. But yeah. Anyway, I do think that a
Okay,
film
there
adaptation
was
work.
a Mass Effect. I think it was a CG
Yeah, yeah,
movie.
that's right.
Did you see it?
No.
Okay, so I wouldn't know. That's a game that I never attempted. So
Yep.
wow. Okay, so before we get to the big reveal,
Okay.
I just wanted to mention a few games. Well, actually, I mentioned them: Tekken,
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat, Assassin's Creed, Resident Evil, and the new movie that just came out with Tom Holland, right? Uncharted.
Uncharted. Yeah, Uncharted.
Yeah, which I think we might have to do that one of these days when it
Oh, okay.
comes out on DVD. I'll bring it up,
Okay.
when we'll check it out.
Okay.
But you had any other movies that you thought about putting on your list?
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about putting a Final Fantasy. Particularly, they have a trying to think of the right word, a universe. So like every Final Fantasy kind of had its own separate story with its separate thing. They're not really connected,
Mm-hmm.
except for there's one that was from Final Fantasy 12 and a game called Final Fantasy Tactics called Ivalice, which is a kind of like a medieval setting. So I was thinking that would be a good honorable mention. Um, yeah, I couldn't really think of a whole lot of other ones. Like I said, I would want to see a proper Street Fighter. I could see a Street Fighter film be kind of like an MCU thing where they would just have movies about those certain characters, then have a crossover movie where they all fight in a tournament. I think that could be interesting, or at least maybe a Netflix series. So,
Well, they did have a Chung Li
I don't want
Street Fighter
I
movie.
don't want to talk about that. So yeah, I think they could do it well, but
Right. Well, I'm not saying that the movie was done well.
yeah,
I'm just saying that there was a movie, and that also was a comic too,
yeah, I know,
Street Fighter. So,
yeah,
yeah, the more I think about it, I'd have to get the Jean-Claude Van Damme version.
yeah. I mean
Um,
that one's at least unintentionally funny and crazy, but
right. Well, and it was one of Raul Julia's last
yeah,
films, so it would be worth having,
yeah,
I think.
sure.
All right, drum roll, number one.
All right, for you, number one was none other than the Blue Bomber himself, Mega Man.
Dun, 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 dun. I got it. I mean, I think that song is in every time I think of Mega Man, that song goes,
Yeah,
that music is just so
yeah,
addicting, I think.
yeah,
Um, yes, Dr. Wily, Dr. Light, um, all of the different robots.
yep.
I this is my number one because I actually beat one of the robot bosses, the
Okay,
Bubble Man
okay.
guy. I beat him,
Uh huh.
so I actually retained his power.
Uh huh.
So I could just see this. It might be one of those movies that it would just be like the origin story, and because originally he was just supposed to be a lab assistant, and after Dr. Wily started going bad, making all the robot masters, is when Dr. Light turned him in because Dr. Light was a pacifist.
Yep.
So, he wanted all to help mankind. And so if you had this storyline, I've thought about this really a lot,
Yeah.
that, you could like see him create them from the beginning, and why he made this robot. You could see that one working, and Dr. Wiley behind the scenes making him into a bad robot, and infecting them or whatever.
Mhm.
I think it would be a real good story,
Sure, sure. Yeah, obviously there's a inspiration from the Mega Man franchise from very popular anime Astro Boy. So I mean that's part of it. I do like the Mega Man universe. I find it very compelling. The design of it and the characters are very interesting. So yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah, and gosh, there are so many robot masters that you could
Yeah,
choose from. It's
sure.
like, I mean, you got what, Mega Man 10? How many different versions do you have? Or is that Mega Man X, I guess they call it?
Well, no, Mega Man X is its own thing. It's a separate thing. So
Okay, but
yeah,
and then you also have other characters like with Sonic.
sure.
He does have
Yeah,
people that he calls allies.
yeah,
So
yeah, totally.
yeah, it would be cool.
Yeah,
Definitely.
cool.
And your number one?
So my number one is a game that is not very well known. It's the game or series called Ys. It's pronounced Ys, and it's it's a RPG game series, and it's been around for forever since like the mid '80s. And
Really?
yeah, and it's basically you follow the main character. His name is Adol, and he just finds himself in uh, various adventures no matter where he goes, and there's always some interesting mystery to solve. So the first game, involves this mythical land called East. That's a floating city in the sky, and he climbs this tower and finds these mysterious, you know, uh, it's yeah. I'm not. I don't think I'm doing it justice by describing it, but basically, I think of it as a modern day fairy tale where he meets this mysterious girl in this dungeon. He rescues her. She ends up being a goddess, and he ends up getting transported to this other world. And then from there, it just gets even crazier. And so, he finds himself going to different countries and solving problems, whether it's like a um, yeah, it's interesting. So anyway, I'd like to see a movie or a series of movies based on his adventures. So
And what system was that for?
all kinds. So it started out as a PC game, and you can get I think all of them now at this point on Steam, except for like the fifth one. The fifth one was on the Super Nintendo, and it got a couple ports, but I think that's the only one that you can't really get. But the rest of them you can get on Steam right now. They're all available.
And as far as the graphics, and you said they're all different stories?
Yeah, pretty much. And they've remade them as well, so like you can experience them even on modern systems now. Most of them.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I've gained a lot of knowledge with
Good.
some of the games that you've picked. Probably will watch our show again
Okay.
and check it out. Maybe I'm going to write some of these down and check them out.
Sure. And they did make an anime series for this, a long time ago, so that's available somewhere, I'm sure.
Wow. Well, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, um, which one of our top five do you think will become a live action movie first? Or shall I say, which one are you going to write the script for? You did take the class, right?
Yeah, I did take a class.
You could.
Yeah. Anyway. All right.
Yeah. All right. So that's our top five.
Yeah.
What's yours? Let us know.
Yeah, totally.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yep. All right,
All
let's close it up there. We will be seeing you next week. Between now and then, we will have the premiere of Marvel's Moon Knight on Disney Plus. So we're going to watch the first episode and talk about it next week.
I cannot wait.
All right, very good.
Good. We'll see you then.
Yep. Goodbye. God bless.
Goodbye. God bless, and tell your friends.